Welcome back to another episode of the Cameras and Coffee podcast. Today I'm sitting here with Dana Kadwell, and she's from Hustle and Gather, and we're going to talk about work-life balance, which sounds like a unicorn. We're going to dive into that. So welcome, Dana. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. It's actually one of my favorite topics to talk about. So super stoked to be on today.
Yeah, that honestly, it is. It's something where it's like, okay, is this even tangible? I feel when we're recording this, it's a lot of people in the wedding industry's down season if you're in the Midwest. So it feels more attainable then, but when this episode comes out, it's probably going to be like the hit of wedding season for a lot of people, photographers in general, just because the weather will be nicer. So this is something where maybe you need to listen in and hear all of this because you just need a little step back, a little break as you're diving in full force for the season. So I can't wait to just pull back all of it. So it'll be good.
Yeah.
It'll be good.
Yeah. Awesome.
So Dana, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about Hustle and Gather. You can kind of, I guess, elevator pitch it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot there to talk about, but kind of tell us what kind of avenues there are in your business, like maybe kind of like the niches that are there.
Yeah. So I have a pretty long story, but I will keep it very brief. I am in business with my sister, my older sister. We started back in 2005. I was getting married and we couldn't find a venue that I loved. And so we were having lunch and she had this crazy idea that we should open up a venue. And I thought she was insane. And she thought I was like seriously going to go along with it. And we're both scientists, actually. I have a chemistry background and she has a biology background.
Wow.
And so we're very like data driven people. And so we're like, well, before we invest in something, let's figure out what the market needs. So we became wedding planners. We did that for about 7 years before we reprised that goal or dream of owning a venue. And then in 2013 started down that path of opening the venue. And the venue is celebrating 10 years today.
Wow, today.
This year. This year. Why did I say today?
Oh. I was like, today to the date?
Oh my goodness. It's Friday. Okay. It's Friday. Oh, geez, Louise. Okay. So the venue is celebrating 10 years this year. And in the middle of it, we opened up Anthem House, which is a luxury planning line, just hit that luxury market in our area. And then in about 2019, we were really had found our groove. We started getting a lot of vendors asking us questions and really wanting us to consult. And so we said, well, maybe there's something here. And we are sisters, so we talk all the time. And we always have this thing called sister talk. And if you're ever around us, sometimes it's like an odd interaction because we just are kind of going back and forth and whatnot. And just that kind of dynamic is something people always gravitated towards. So we opened up Hustle and Gather, which is speaking, consulting. We have a podcast. And so now we're here today, and I speak all over the country talking about work-life balance and company culture and kind of getting away from that hustle and grind culture and whatnot. So very, very busy, very full life.
Yeah. That's a lot to peel back in there too. I think about the time you got married. It was about the time I got married too. And that was the economy was going down from there. Yep. So that I can see why 2013 was probably that time where you went full force in, especially if you're a data girl.
Yes.
But yeah, that's just so many things. Yeah. And I'm sure, did you guys grow really quickly or was it a steady type of business that you over time? Because there's a lot there too.
So we had a very organic growth. So we were both teachers. And I didn't go full time with the planning company until I think it was year 5. And it just happened to coincide with the year I had my daughter. And at the end of the day, after I had to pay for daycare and her health insurance, I was bringing home $200 a month. And I was like, this is not worth it. And so we had never really, we really fell into the planning world and I loved it. My sister loved it. And we were like, maybe this is just where we're supposed to be. And we were always like, oh, it'll be a hobby, just something we supplement. And then once we kind of realized that teaching was becoming kind of a dead end road, like, well, maybe we should really, really go back to this dream of owning a venue and kind of creating some financial freedom for the both of our families. And so it was really a slow growth. And then the venue, we are not independently wealthy people. We came from nothing. We put everything we had in it. We sold every house. We maxed out every credit card, like liquidated all our
Wow.
401k, so I don't recommend, but we did it. That's bad financial
Oh, I
advice,
mean,
but and it was a little bit of a slower growth because I felt like we didn't trust ourselves fully to jump 100% in terms of like going after that big business loan and really like kind of
yeah.
putting it all in. So it took a while to kind of recover from the debt that we had accrued. And we
Mm,
never found it took us about 3 or 4 years to find a real niche client. Like, who was a client that we're
mm,
serving? We were serving
yeah.
everybody. And it kind of created a really hard way to market. And we just didn't really hit our stride until year 4. And then then it blew up. And then it was like
Mm,
going from, 50 weddings, like, 100 weddings. So
yeah.
yeah.
It's and it's funny that you say that because that's kind of how my business has gone too, is like as soon as I figured out who my ideal bride
Hmm.
was, that's when I knew like, okay, like this is who I need to market to. And that is how like this year is just booming because it's like all these couples that I can relate to pick me based on like our
Yep.
interactions. Um, and that kind of thing. So it kind of works out. Plus, then you have people that you
Yeah,
enjoy and makes it less work in those
for
ways,
sure.
creates a
Yeah.
relationship. And I think a lot of that
Mhm.
relational helps
Yeah.
businesses, honestly. Um,
And for us,
so
like a lot of it became, I mean, really kind of tying this into this conversation, a lot of it came to when we kind of let go and recognize that we needed to have more of a life in general. And it really
mm,
came when we built that team. Like, we're like, okay, like we can't do it all.
yeah.
We have to start hiring. And that allowed us to really take the time to find that ideal client, because before, when you're in the weeds and you're in
Yeah.
the trenches, you lose your creativity and your vision and your purpose and your voice because you're just surviving. That was like
Hmm.
the real big game
Yeah.
changer for us.
That it is hard. And it's hard in those seasons too to
Yes.
like realize you're just
Yep.
surviving and like take a step back.
Yeah.
About when did you decide to like start bringing on team members besides you and your sister? Like, how
Yeah.
did that?
So the planning company always had some form of like 1099 kind of contract
Mm,
workers. We had about
okay.
two, and just people that we really trusted. And then we kind of about that year 3, 4, we started getting really busy. But the venue we actually hired kind of early on, but we only hired one person. And in hindsight,
Mm,
probably it would have been helpful to hire more people. Once we started hiring more people, it really was super helpful.
yeah.
But we were never really afraid. I mean, it's scary to hire somebody. It's different. 1099. It's
Yeah.
like you make money, they make money, but like a salaried
Hmm.
employee, you're like responsible for their
Yeah.
well-being. And so it was a lot of
A
pressure.
lot of pressure.
It was a lot of
Yeah.
pressure, and we had to kind of get out of the mindset of we couldn't do it. I think
Mm,
for anyone who's ever had any financial like struggle, it's hard to get out of a scarcity mindset,
hmm.
and not, and you want to rest back on that. Like, you want to say like, oh, I have to have X amount of money in the bank, in order for me to feel confident to
Yeah.
move forward in this. But it was pretty early on. It was about I think year 2, halfway through year 2, we hired our first
Oh,
person.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So you kind of realized in there,
Yeah.
like, okay, this is we need to make this happen.
Yes. Yes.
Oh man. So tell me what you think about the phrase
Yeah.
balance is a unicorn. Tell me about that.
Well,
Like I know we're gonna peel back all the
yeah.
things, but like when you hear that, what is your first thought?
So I was really, uh, I really struggled a lot because I had 2 kids in the middle of all this, and I always felt like I was failing all the time. Like, I just
Mhm.
felt an immense sense of guilt, and I do have some regrets for how much I did miss. And I tell the story often about like my son. Like, I don't remember a lot of his infancy. Actually, I remember hardly any of it. And because we were in the middle of building the Bradford and whatnot, and it was my last baby, and it was one of those things that like, you can never get back time, and there's never a do-over
Yeah.
in those things. And so it was a really, really hard thing for me to come to. And I just felt like a failure. Like, why, like they tell me this thing is
Mhm.
possible. This, everyone talks
Yeah.
about this work-life balance. Like, why can't I figure it out? And so, as I always do, I just started researching it. Like, what is this thing? Like, where did
Mhm.
it even come from? And it was really, really interesting to learn about the history of it, that it really came about in the late 60s, early 70s when women started really going into the workforce. Because remember back
Yeah.
then, like once they got married or had kids, they stayed home. Well, women were like, I don't want to do that anymore. And so they started having
Mhm.
careers, but they were still expected to run the house
Yep.
and have these careers, right? So
Yeah.
this kind of it started really piquing some sociology like experts and say like, how are they doing this? And of course, then the question is like, how do you do it all? How do you do it all? Mind you, they never asked men at this at any point. And
Uh-huh.
they said, well, this is a really interesting phenomenon that these women are able to do this. So let's research it. And there was a researcher named Cantor who came around and said, look, this is about to blow up. Like, we have to figure out how to create sustainable lives for these women. Like, this is not a sustainable way for them to live. And she published a book and called out corporations like, you're not supporting families in the way that you should be
Mm.
supporting families. And so a couple
Yeah.
corporations were like, oh, well, what you're saying is you want us to basically make it so it's easy to be a mom. So let's bring your kids to work. Or we'll put daycares in our like organizations, and that'll solve the problem. And that's why you see a lot in the 80s, a lot of corporations had
9 to
daycares.
5.
Yes.
It's like that movie 9 to
Yes.
5. Yeah.
Yes. And
Shout out Dolly Parton.
right. Yeah. That concept kind of just created a band-aid. It didn't really address the
Mm.
issue. And that's what Cantor said. Like, you're missing the point. This is not about, creating a band-aid. It's trying to figure out an actual, like, let's research it. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out how to create these sustainable lives.
Yeah.
And so in the 80s, it created this really big pressure cooker for women. And they chose their families over careers, and they started leaving the workforce in droves. And these corporations at this point had realized how valuable women were. And they said, no, 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 don't leave. Mind you, they won't give you raises or make you important, but they find you super valuable. And they're like,
Yeah.
how can we get you to stay? And they basically said, well, all you need is a little bit of balance. And this phrase was coined, work-life balance. And they genuinely believed that it was
Mhm.
just 50-50, that you need to figure out how to silo these two lives. Like, when you're at work, you're at work. When you're at home, you're at home. It's 100% on either side. And it became this standard and so it started with women, but now it's across the board. Like, every human has this feeling, right? And it's not just parents, it's anybody who has a personal life at all
Yeah.
has this feeling of trying to create this work-life balance. And it's still the case. We still haven't taken the time to research and to figure out how to create sustainable lives for people that have who are higher achievers, who have high careers that require them a lot, and then also who have things at home and whatnot. So once I learned that, I realized, oh, well, it isn't me. Like, no one was ever successful at it. Like, because that's not real life. It's not real
Yeah.
life to say,
Yeah.
I'm going to go to work, and the minute I walk in the door, I leave everything behind. It's like that. Oh, it's called that TV show Severed. Have you seen that?
I was
Yeah.
just gonna ask, have you seen, is it
Severance.
Severance?
Yeah.
I don't remember what
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, where it's like they don't remember anything at home and they,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that show is so
Yeah,
good.
it's a total mind twist when you think about it. But yeah, and so then I kind of realized, okay, you got to give yourself a little bit of grace here, and really started thinking about,
Mhm.
this is not about a balance, it's about integration. It's how am I a whole
Mm.
person at work, and how am I a whole person at home?
Yeah.
Because my whole person is, I'm a spouse, I'm a mother, I am a wedding planner, I'm a business owner. And
Yep.
even though I'm at work, I'm still a spouse, I'm still a mother. I'm not just just a wedding planner or just a business owner. Um, so yeah, so I think that the unicorn comes in. It's the people, I feel like, that can recognize that work-life balance isn't real. It's not a real thing. It's more about how can you
Mm.
integrate everything about you into everything that you do.
Yeah. So basically it's like a made up
Yeah, totally
concept
made up concept.
where it's just
Yes.
like, yeah, which makes women feel like they need to aspire
Mhm.
to, and it's kind of like an unattainable
Yeah.
goal that we are all trying to work towards. And Oh, so interesting. And it's interesting we're doing this episode today because when we're filming this, it's March and it's actually International Women's Day
Oh,
today.
wow.
So I'm like, ooh, what a great topic to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
But um yeah, so how do we need to like understand replacing that word balance with integration? How would you
Yeah,
say
so
that?
there's a couple of things that like I really, and I say this as my therapist helped me get to these points too, because I am a
Mm,
strong believer in therapy and, and so we had a
yes.
lot of conversations, and through some of these conversations, I realized, okay, this is something I feel like people should hear. But the
Yeah.
biggest thing for me was recognizing like opportunity cost. And I never
Mm,
had thought about that before. And if you've ever taken like an economics class, you talk about opportunity costs, and they use that example. There's no such thing as a free lunch. So the
oh,
idea
yes.
is that someone invites you out for a free hour-long lunch, and although that lunch was monetarily free, it wasn't
Yep.
free because there's this indirect cost, right? So by sitting at that lunch for an
Mhm.
hour, you lost an hour of maybe productive time, maybe an hour of sleep, an hour of doing something else, in general. So the idea is that when you say yes to something, there is always a sacrifice. And I feel like before, when I approached the world and life, I was like, I'm going to make this decision. And I didn't consider what I wasn't experiencing a sacrifice, right? It was just like, oh, that's just what it
Mm,
is. And so I
yeah.
had to start looking at things as, what is the opportunity cost for this? And I had to start recognizing that every decision that I make has another decision on the other side. So, like, a great example is,
Mhm.
I have like the worst FOMO. Like, I'm an extrovert. And so, like, I struggle when I have to miss like a networking meeting or something like that. And
Mm,
I
yeah.
would consistently like go, and then I'd feel so guilty because I missed a kid's baseball game, or I missed something at school, or
Mm,
whatever the case was. And so
yeah.
now it's recognizing before I go to like, okay, I have this networking meeting, or I have, Henry's baseball game. And if I promised him I was
Mhm.
going to go to it, maybe it's a season opener, maybe it's a playoff game, maybe he's like begged me to go, like, I'm going to choose that, because when I'm at that networking meeting, I'm just going to feel totally guilty the entire time, like, that I'm there.
Oh, yeah.
And there, I'm not
Mhm.
even going to be productive or whatever I needed to do at that meeting. But if it's a
Yeah.
game, and I've been to most of them, and it's just kind of like a random off game, like, and I really, this networking meeting has someone there that I've been really trying to connect with, then I'm
Mhm.
going to make that decision. And it doesn't mean that I'm not texting, what's the score? How did he hit? Let me see a video. But I'm at peace with it. So I'm not constantly at
Yeah.
war with myself, trying to say, oh, you're such a bad mother. Oh, you're
Mhm.
such a bad, business owner, whatever the stories we tell ourselves. It's, you've made peace with that decision, and you've recognized that I've made the best choice for me at this moment. It may not be the best choice
Yeah.
tomorrow when I have that same situation, right? But right now is the best
Mhm.
choice for me. And I think, recognizing that I have the freedom to do that, to actually like weigh the pros and cons, like, I don't know, just it took a lot of like weight off my shoulders, made me feel like
Yeah.
I wasn't, messing it up all the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of times us in this industry too, like we don't there's things we're passionate about, and I know I can speak on behalf of photographers when I say we're all very
Mhm.
creative and we see what other photographers are doing. A lot of times we don't understand the monetary value that is lost um in time. And you have to like think like, okay, I'm doing this, but is this going to project my business or is there monetary value in it?
True.
And it's like, why are you doing it
Yeah.
then? I know there's a lot of that where I'm going back and forth this year thinking like as as we're rolling into taxes and thinking back on the last year and it's like, why did I
Mm-hmm.
do that? Like there was no value in
Mm-hmm.
it last year. So this year I need to say
Mm-hmm.
no to that. And
Yeah.
yes, things that are more important to me or are actually beneficial for my business um in those ways. But yeah, exactly like when you say as a mom, like, is that something you're going to miss and feel bad for missing in your
Right.
life um, that you can't get back? So there's those things you
Yeah.
weigh.
And it goes like, even if, you're not a parent, it's the same thing. I'm an adjunct professor at
Mhm.
a local college, And originally I did it because I was like, oh, how cool. But then after the first semester, I was like, this has got to make sense. And so I completely restructured the class, and now it's a great feeder program into my internship program and my part-time staff. Like, amazing, totally
Mm.
worth teaching it. Like, it's like a great training ground. It makes you really understand the students, and it's perfect. Well, one semester they said, oh, the kids love you, we'd love for you to teach this business class. I wasn't a major in business, right? But I was like, sure, like, it's intro to entrepreneurship, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And it totally kicked my butt all semester. It took up so much time. And in the middle of
Mhm.
it, I had this really amazing opportunity that I had to say no because I was teaching this class. And so
Mm.
and I think at the time you don't always necessarily know what it is coming down the pipeline. But for me, I've
Mhm.
started saying, like, hey, maybe I don't really fully understand the opportunity cost right now, but I have to ask myself, is this fulfilling my purpose? Is this like part of my why? Like, what is my why? My why is financial freedom, right? Is this part
Yeah.
of my vision? Is this going to get me anywhere? Whether it's even personal growth, right? And that's just as important sometimes. And if
Mhm.
the answers are no, if even two out of those three answers are yes and one of those is a no, then I'm like, it's probably not worth it because there is something better that's going to take up my time
Mhm.
instead.
Yeah, I agree. That oh, that's good because that is something we have to reflect
Yeah.
on for sure. Um, oh, I totally get it. And sometimes you're like speaking to me in a way because I'm like, oh, yep. I have to think back to the things that I kind of let
Yeah.
in that I need to like release
Yes.
a little bit.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so let's kind of
Yeah.
talk about like the scheduling and like keeping those things open. So what is that like when talking about like a schedule or a system in
Yeah.
place for those kind of
I think
things?
that too. So I am a rule follower. I love learning. I love books. And so I really, for a while, like when I became an entrepreneur, I lived my life by these set of rules that I've learned, right? Like, this book says to do this. I've heard this person speak and they said to do this. And it just was like constant failure. Like, I could never get it right.
Mm,
And it wasn't until my therapist was like, well, because they're not you. Like, they don't have the same wants
yeah.
and desires and needs that you have. Like, you are different. And so you have to figure it out what it is that you need, that you want, like what makes sense for you. And so I
So
really took the time to ask myself, okay, when am I the most productive? Like, when can I get the most work done? When do I need to like take a break in the day? And then what does my weekly schedule look like? Can I hustle and grind it for 5 days a week? Like, genuinely, truly, can I do that? And then like completely rest, 2 days a week. And so I had to figure out what it is that because for me especially, as I've ventured into this more speaking arena, it's so much content creation, right? It's so like
oh
creating like
yeah.
presentations. And so I get these writer blocks, right? And so I can't push through it.
Mhm.
I'm sure it's the same thing with creatives. Like, you can't just push through when you're not feeling it, right? Because you're just not going to be producing the
Mhm.
best work.
Yep.
And so I had to structure my life around that. So I created sacred times that, like, no, it's blocked off on my calendar when I know I can be productive. I've created breaks, rest in my schedule, vacations, days off, things that allow me to refuel, refresh, re energize, because then I come back and I'm 1,000 times more productive other than if I just like push through. So there isn't this
Yeah.
perfect schedule. There isn't these perfect systems that you can put in place. It's just figuring it out. Like, how is it that you are going to be able to be the most productive and the most efficient? And your schedule may be like, I have a really good friend. She works from noon to midnight. Like, that's her schedule. Like, I get emails from her at like
Mhm.
10 p.m. and I'm like, girl, I'm not answering you. But that's where she's the most productive, and it
Yeah.
makes sense for her. And I think, not being afraid to say, hey, this is what I need. This is where I find, the most productivity, and own it, and, stand by it and create that schedule that's going to help you be, the most productive you can be.
So answer me
Okay.
this. When do all of your best ideas come to you? Is
Mhm.
there like something you're noticing that you're like, this is the time when I'm doing this, I get all the best ideas?
Yes.
Because for me personally, it's like while I'm doing something else productive
Yes.
where I'm like, oh, I gotta
Oh,
jot that down or write that down. Or it's like when I can't be by a pen and paper. So I'm like speaking it to take note on my phone. So I remember
I
later.
do the exact same thing. I have so many voice memos
Do
to
you?
myself. It's insane.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Oh,
yes,
but
so where I live kind of removed from, I say removed from the world, but like kind of out in the country. So it takes 30 minutes to get anywhere and do anything. So my best ideas actually
mhm,
come in the
same.
car, listening to music, and I
Mhm.
just kind of like really zone out, and I get all these ideas come to me. And so I have a ton of voice memos because I'm in the car and I can't write it down or text anybody or
Yes.
anything. And I think for me, what that told me is I need mindless time. Like I need time
Mm.
where I'm not really doing much of anything. And TV doesn't work because TV is too
Yeah.
mindless, right? It's something where you
Mhm.
can listen to music or podcasts, but still you're still kind of thinking, but it's not, you know,
Yeah.
it's not like you're getting sucked into something. The best ideas come to me then.
Yeah. And for me, it's like when I'm walking my dog
Yes.
or in the
Yes.
shower. I saw something recently where it was like, I don't know if it was like Jessica Biel or something where she's like, I have my notepad in my shower. It's like, what? So it's like, I don't know if it's like a waterproof
Sure.
one or like
Yeah.
far enough away from the water where she like jots notes. I'm like, that is
Yeah.
hysterical.
That's so true though.
But I was like, it's so true. Like that's when we have our best thoughts is like when we're doing
100%.
those mindless
Yeah.
things or um yeah, I always had that when teaching, like even when I was teaching preschool, I'd be like doing something with the kids or whatever and I'm like, "Oh, here's a great idea. Like how do I jot it down?" Cuz back when I was teaching, I mean, it's been like 10 years, but back when I was teaching, it was one of those things where we couldn't have our
Mm.
phones on us. So I was like, where do I jot
Right.
this down? A lot of times it was like writing on your
Yes.
skin or
Yeah.
whatnot. Cause you're like, I have a pen,
Right.
like I'll just write it
Right.
there. It's like nap
Yep.
time and I'm like rubbing the kids'
Mhm.
backs. Like I gotta write that down, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, oh, it's when those things come to you, it's like you don't want to
Right.
forget it in that moment.
Yes.
But
Yes. They're
yeah.
always the best ideas too, out of all of them.
So what would you say is like your mantra of like what you would tell people when they think like, yeah, I can do this. I can do work. I can do life. I can have this
Yeah.
balance. What would you say to them?
I love to say that you can't have it all the time. Like, and
Mm,
I think sometimes that sounds very pessimistic, and I think it's actually super freeing to say that you can't have it
yeah.
all the time. And there's times when, my work is consuming 70% of my life and my family is only 30% of my
Yeah.
life. And, I'm very lucky. I have a great support system. My husband's fantastic. And so, it's like, hey, like, I'm going to need you to do more because I have to do less here because I have to, be productive or whatever the case is,
Mhm.
whatever's going on here, right? And then sometimes
Yeah.
it's the opposite. Like this past semester or past season, my daughter's a competitive basketball player, and I was asked to
Mm.
be her assistant coach on her middle school team. Not because I played basketball. I am 6 feet tall, but I did not play basketball. I have watched a lot of basketball, but um, the year before her team, they were just terrible. I mean, it was awful. But they were just, she had no fun. Like she used to come home like miserable because the girls, they just
Aw.
didn't get along. And I was like, team culture, that's my jam. Like I am there. So I was like, let me just
Yeah.
come help with team bonding. Let me help create a team. I may not be able to like, show you how to shoot a basketball, but I can help at least make us be a team, and I loved it. It was fantastic, but it took me away from, I had to be done with work every day, Monday through Friday at 2:45 to get to practice on time. I had games and there was a couple weekends and whatnot. And, and so in that season, my home life, my family life was much higher than what I was producing at work. But I had structured everything around it. Is my slow season in a lot of
Mm.
ways, definitely with like weddings, but slow season, even in like, it wasn't conference season yet. So I wasn't doing a ton of speaking gigs. So I had the time to do it. And it brought me so much joy, like just so much joy. It was just the most wonderful thing.
Mm.
And
Love that.
I think about it and like, sure, I maybe would have been able to finish a project quicker or maybe would have been able to take on something else. But the personal satisfaction I got from that, how close I got with my
Yeah.
daughter. Like, it's just irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah,
yeah. And so I
exactly.
knew at that time that I'm not going to be the stellar, amazing, wonderful, like always producing, always creating boss, but I was going to be the stellar, amazing, like mom and coach. And that
Yeah.
was okay. It was okay to have that piece and not be 100%, in the other part of my
Mhm.
life. And so I think that there's a lot of times we have to make choices and we have to understand that yes, we can have it all. We can't have it all at the same time. And that's okay. It's totally okay.
Mhm. Well, and I think like when you think about it, like that balance there, like, yeah, like it was rewarding in a way that it was something like the mom
Hmm.
side of things where that's the other part of you. Um, and it was like, even though one area didn't get all of you, this area that means a lot to you
Yeah.
did. And so I get it because it's, yeah, I go through that a lot because I do
Mhm.
mentorship for young girls that are currently now in 8th grade. And I have to outweigh
Yeah.
those, like think like, okay, that's an important piece. It gives me satisfaction. It gives me purpose. And so like that's where a lot of that
Yeah.
makes sense. I get
Well,
it.
I love that. My
Um
daughter's in eighth grade, so I feel you. It's,
Oh, my daughter
yeah.
is too. So, yeah, about those
Yeah.
same times. I like when you say like you can't have it all. I'm just going to bring up our
Okay.
sponsor. Our sponsor is Imagine, and they are an AI editing tool for photographers. So if you are struggling to get everything done, and especially in this season, and you're trying to figure out where to bring the norm and where to let go of some things, you can get 15 free edits by using my code in the show notes to sign up for Imagine Now and try it out. It's really easy. All you do is upload a couple catalogs. It'll start building your profile, and then you can get to work and just let it learn as you go. So it's truly amazing. I love it. It's given me my life back for sure. But Dana, as we continue, is there anything else you want to cover for us to know in this when it comes to work-life balance?
I think I've hit all the highlights. I feel like the biggest thing for us, as especially if we're mostly women listening, to really just give yourself the grace and let
Yes.
the guilt is self-manufactured, and there's times when,
Mhm.
I want that validation and I'll say something to the kids to be like, oh my gosh, I've been around. They're like, no, like not at all. Like that's not how we feel, at all about that. Like we have
Mhm.
created a
Yeah.
space where they can tell me how they feel. And and I feel like it's allowed me to just really be able to be 100% my best self. I travel a lot, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard being away from them and I miss them, but I
Yeah.
love what I do. Like, I absolutely
Mhm.
love it. And I can't imagine me without it. And so, as much as I feel like, oh my gosh, like I can't be there, or I'm not home, or I can't do this, or I can't do that, like I wouldn't be a whole person if I had to just choose
Mhm.
one path. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that
Yep.
we're multifaceted people and we have so many things
Yeah.
that, like, I don't know, that make us up, and it's okay to say like I love what I do, and sometimes like I want to choose this over this other part of my life, and
Mm.
let go of that guilt.
Yeah. Oh, so many good things. Are you speaking at anything this summer that you can share
Yeah.
yet, or what kinds of things are you looking forward to
Yeah.
when it comes to
So that's a
speaking
great question. I'm
engagements?
actually, I'll have already done this by the time it comes out probably, but I'm about to embark on a couple weeks of going to Signature CEO and also to Emerge Event Collective. And then this summer is mostly filled with like just local, like NACE, WIPA, ILEA chapters, chatting through there. Conference season, I did
Cool.
Cater Source and whatnot earlier this year. I'm on the NACE national board, so I'm not speaking at experience, just because I'm on the board and I have enough duties to do during that conference.
Yeah.
That takes my
Can't
time.
do it
No, I
all. I
can't do
think
it
that's what
all. Right.
we already
Yes,
covered.
yes,
Yes.
yeah,
Delegation at its
yes, yeah,
finest. Well, as we start to wrap up, I really want to let people know where they can
yeah.
find you in the business. and kind of find all the things if they want to listen to more of your
Yeah.
podcast. So kind of
So
share where they can
we are
find
all over
all
the
the places.
Instagram at Hustle and Gather is our speaking consulting, and that connects you to all the other brands. If you want to see a beautiful venue, it's at the Bradford NC. Our planning is at C&D Events and at Anthem
Gorgeous.
House, at Anthem.house is the other one.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, go check that out. There's a lot of good stuff. All the multifaceted things. Love it. If you are loving this episode, you can find us at the podcast at carriehandsphotography.com/podcast, or you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Cameras and Coffee Podcast. And also, if you really did love this episode and hearing about Dana and what she does and were inspired today, head over to the podcast app and leave a review so others can know what you enjoyed and know if they should tune in. But yeah, this concludes our episode of Work Life Balance. So, Dana, thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I had a wonderful time.
Loved it. But yeah, until next time, my friends, I just want to say cheers.